Okay.
Right. Let's see. Okay, we are live. Welcome everyone to Egni 2020 online edition. Croeso i bawb I gynadledd Egni 2020. Gwahanol iawn eleni. Da ni wedi bod yn cynnal y cynadledd yma am 2 flynedd rwan. Ac eleni ar y we, pam ddim. Dyna dwi'n feddwl. A dwi'n meddwl bod ni panel gwych, awran wych o'n blaena heddiw. Welcome everyone to Egni 2020 online edition. 1 hour. Let's see what North Wales has to offer in terms of energy going forward. We are in a COVID crisis, but there's another crisis, and let's not forget it. It's the biggest crisis we've ever faced as a human race, and that's climate change, global warming. Australia was just on fire. It may still be on fire, actually. So even though COVID has come at us and it's changed everything about the way that we're living our lives, let's not forget there are other big challenges that we're trying to tackle. And I think this conference will highlight some of the areas that and the ways that North Wales is trying to play its part in tackling the climate crisis. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker this afternoon. That's Henry Aaron from the North Wales Economic Ambition Board. And Henry is leading on the energy programme and the energy side of the growth deal. So over to you, Henry, with some sort of an update perhaps as to the work in the growth deal in terms of energy.
Diolch yn fawr, Pryderi, pnawn da pawb. Good afternoon all. I'm Henry Aaron, the Energy Programme Manager at the Ambition Board. And just a quick thanks to Pryderi and the team for organising this. I think given the circumstances, it's great that we can still get together and kind of share ideas and updates remotely. So thanks Pryderi, Emily and the team. I'm the first one up, so I'm going to test the sharing screen function. I've got a few slides that I'll run through. So I'm hoping that everyone can see an introductory slide.
Yeah.
I'm getting nods from the other panelists, so I'll take that as a yes. Great stuff. Okay, so I've only got 10 minutes, so it's going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour. But what I'll cover is an introduction to the Economic Ambition Board, a little bit about the North Wales Growth Deal, and then focusing on the key strand of the deal that I'm responsible for, which is the Low Carbon Energy Programme. Okay, so first and foremost, an introduction to the Economic Ambition Board. Established in 2016, it's a regional partnership between the 6 local authorities in the region, illustrated by the blue map there, the private sector, represented by the North Wales Mersey Business Council, and then further education and higher education partners, Bangor University, Wrexham Glyndŵr, Coleg Cambria, and Group Cambridge. And the focus of the Ambition Board is to deliver against a vision for economic growth that was developed in partnership, published in 2017, which is centred upon creating the appropriate conditions for high-value sectors such as energy and advanced manufacturing to flourish and boost their contribution to the economy. And one of the priority areas that the Ambition Board is currently focused on to help deliver that vision is the North Wales Growth Deal. And so in January of this year, a Ambition Board Programme Management Office was established. I won't run through the members. Programme Director Alwen Williams, who's come in from BT and Openreach. And the focus of the Programme Management Office is on driving forward the growth deal and delivering the respective programmes and projects within it. Okay, so on to the North Wales Growth Deal. Similar to the other growth deals that you may have heard of across Wales and the UK, Growth Deal is a deal between the region, represented by the Economic Ambition Board, and UK Government and Welsh Government. It's got a total value of approximately £1 billion, and the catalyst for that is £240 million of government investment. That's £120 million from UK Government and £120 million from UK government, so 50-50 split in the funding. And what the growth deal involves is investing in 14 transformational projects across 6 interlinked and codependent programs. And some of those programs and projects are involved with building on the region's high growth sectors, where there are opportunities for quality employment and supply chain. And energy is one of those key growth sectors, as is advanced manufacturing. And other parts of the projects and programs are focused on addressing some of the barriers to economic growth. So addressing digital connectivity, transport infrastructure, and land and property, and so on. And where we are with the growth deal at the moment is that we reached the key milestone of agreeing heads of terms with both governments in November of 2019. And now the focus is upon developing detailed business cases in line with Treasury best practice, so that we can get all the funding approved and reach a final deal agreement hopefully by the end of 2020. Okay, as I mentioned, we've got 14 projects as part of the growth deal across 6 programs. The 2 things that all these projects have in common is, firstly, they are considered potentially transformational projects for the region, and secondly, they are all projects that align with both UK government and Welsh government strategic policy objectives. And whilst I probably haven't got time to talk you through all 14 of the growth deal projects, I'll just talk through the 6 programs. We've got the low carbon energy program, which I'll talk about next. We've got the advanced manufacturing, the land and property program, land-based industries and tourism program, a program looking at improving digital connectivity across the region, and then finally a strategic transport program. And one of the key areas of work that the Ambition Board is also focused on is on a program to improve skills across the region. And whilst that program is not part of the growth deal, it's a key strand of the Ambition Board's work. Okay, so focus in on the low carbon energy program then. I guess one of the first questions you might ask is why low carbon energy? Why is it important to the region? And I think Pryderi in his introduction, quite neatly alluded to the fact that it's a prominent topic and becoming more and more prominent with each passing year as we see the extremes in climate and so on. We've got declaration of climate emergencies by most organisations. We've got legally binding and extremely ambitious decarbonisation targets. I guess the headline being net zero by 2050. And so the whole UK economy is going to be transitioning to low carbon technologies and ultimately zero carbon in the longer term. So that cuts right across electricity generation, heat, transport. And as part of that transition, there are clearly going to be significant opportunities for high value green jobs, both in terms of developing infrastructure, supply chain, and other areas like R&D and so on. And I think the opportunities for North Wales are significant, and hence why we've got a low carbon programme within the growth deal. The region is already a kind of leader in many ways with respect to low carbon energy. I was reading that we generate the equivalent of 82% of our consumption, of our electricity consumption, from renewables already. So as a region, we're well on our way to meeting those national targets, but there's significant opportunity nonetheless. We are blessed with significant natural resources that enable us to generate renewables. We've got good solar resource, good tide, hydro potential. We've got offshore wind and onshore wind potential as well, and not to mention a number of strategic sites for nuclear technology. So we've got some competitive advantages, and we think that the low carbon energy programme can make a significant contribution to that. So the aim of the programme is up on the screen. It's to help position North Wales as one of the leading UK locations for energy generation and energy related supply chain investment, with expertise in low carbon technologies and renewables. And as I mentioned, the projects that the Ambition Board has shortlisted are seen as potentially transformational, aligning with government policy. Okay, I'll just spend the next couple of minutes talking you through those projects. So the 4 that the Ambition Board currently plans on supporting and helping to deliver. Many of these projects you'll probably be aware of already, but I'll just talk through them very quickly. Firstly, we've got the Morlice project, where we'll be working with Mented Morn to support the next phase of the UK's first large-scale deployment of tidal stream turbines off Holyhead Island. Another kind of real strategic opportunity for the region to become a world leader and a hub for that particular technology. We're working with Bangor University on developing a low-carbon centre of excellence, further developing the sites at M-SParc and at Bangor to allow Bangor to expand their R&D work, already strong areas of work in nuclear and low carbon. We'll be working with the Snowdonia Enterprise Zone and Welsh Government to look at opportunities at the Trawsfynydd site. There's been a lot of talk recently, and we've heard from Ken Skates about government support for establishing that site as a first of a kind for small modular reactors or for advanced modular reactors. And again, another strategic opportunity for North Wales with significant potential for supply chain benefits and high value jobs. And then fourthly, a project that's really at a very early stage of delivery at the moment, has a lot of exciting opportunity. It's a project that the Ambition Board will be leading in the first instance, and we'll be looking at different things we can do across the region to support decarbonisation and renewable energy deployment. We'll look at ideas such as establishing a regional body to kind of get involved and participate in the energy sector and help move projects forward. And we'll also be looking at kind of various possible demonstrator projects in new and emerging technologies that we see as being, again, strategic opportunities for the region. So things like hydrogen, low carbon heating solutions, and local energy networks. But again, that's a project that's kind of very early stage in delivery, and looking forward to working with stakeholders across the region to develop that further. And then final point for me really is just on next steps, which is that we've got a lot of work to do working with the 2 governments over the next year to make sure we can reach that final deal, finalise the funding agreements, and then move forward with the 14 projects that have been identified. And that's everything from me. So diolch yn fawr.
Spot on time as well. Sorry, your final slide.
Well, it was only to say thank you very much, and there's some contact details there on the final slide, social media, etc. Please feel free to get in touch with us.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Henry. That was excellent. And I guess there's a link to our next speaker here, because this is a massive investment for the region. You're talking £240 million for the region. But it's all in the vein of having impact, both in terms of climate and the communities that we serve. And that's a really nice segue into community energy. And Mel, maybe your talk. I'm very much aware of the work that you've done with community organisations, rallying, creating, developing their own energy initiatives, and the impact that that's had in particular. So I'm very much looking forward to your talk, Mel. Diolch I chdi am ymuno efo ni prawn 'ma, ac drosodd i chdi, os yna'n iawn?
Helo pawb, Meleri Davies dwi yn brif swyddog ar partneraeth Ogwen, ond dwi hefyd yn un o sylfaenwyr yn i Ogwen, cynllun hydro cymunedol yn Bethesda. Hello everyone, I hope you can hear me. I'm Meleri Davies, I'm the Chief Officer for Partneriaeth Ogwen, a social enterprise based in Bethesda. And I'm one of the founding directors of Ynni Ogwen, the Community Hydro Scheme, which was initially developed by Partneriaeth Ogwen as one of our major regeneration projects. Back, I'd say we started off about 2014. But I'm mainly sitting here looking at the screen as a community developer. So if you're expecting a presentation full of megawatt hours and data, please zoom out of this meeting. I'm first and foremost a community developer and a community worker. And that was the incentive behind developing Egni Ogwen, the community hydro scheme. I'm going to try and share my screen.
Testing your IT skills now, Mel.
Yeah, exactly. Diolch Bryderi. Okay.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm just going to take you through the journey really from the initial concept of developing Egni Ogwen to where we're at today, which is a social enterprise with sustainability at its heart, and a social enterprise who've actually just received just under £500,000 to develop a new project called Dyffryn Gwyrdd. Dyffryn Gwyrdd means Green Valley, and basically that's our vision, to create a sustainable and green valley in Dyffryn Ogwen. I'll just take you back. A few keywords I'll be referring to throughout the presentation. So datblygu is the Welsh word for to develop, esblygu to evolve, arloesi to be innovative, so innovation. And these three keywords are very important for the community sector in general, but definitely true about the community energy sector. We develop, but we also evolve, and we face many hurdles and obstacles, and we change our business plan, we re-evaluate, and we just, carry on. We started in Bethesda with back in about 2014, and we knew we wanted to harness the tremendous energy in this wonderful river, Afon Ogwen, harness that for environmental and community benefits. And Partneraeth Ogwen managed the process, the pre-planning process. So that included all the feasibility studies, finding grants to pay for the feasibility, the environmental studies, bats, otters, habitats, geomorphology. We also developed the business plan, the business case. We led on the community share offer, and as a community organisation, we were best placed to do that as well. You need, strong community roots to lead these kinds of projects. And in 2 months' time, we'd actually raised all the capital funds to deliver this project through a community share offer. So we haven't had to go to a bank to get a commercial loan to develop Egni Ogwen. And that's something we feel very proud about. It is definitely a community-led project, but it's also a community-owned project. So 80% of our investors come from the local area. This photo is symbolic really of what we are. We're an organisation, we do bring environmental benefits, but we also bring community benefits. And over the 20 years, we will be, we will have a fund of nearly £500,000 to be reinvested to the local community. And we're just in the process of setting up a new charity to deliver those funds back to local organisations. So I mentioned the word innovation. Since 2015, I've been working with local projects. So Partneraeth Ogwen worked closely with the first energy local pilot in Wales, based in Bethesda, where we helped them to recruit 100 households to be part of the project, whereby locally sourced power from the Afon Berthen Hydro, it's a National Trust hydro scheme, is actually being used in local households and sold at a reduced price. So for the first year of Energy Local, people were paying 7p per kilowatt hour for their electricity when the hydro was turning. Now, when you're talking about community energy projects, it's not just about exporting to the grid. It's more about raising awareness of sustainability and and renewable energy generation. And with the Energy Local project as well, it was actually reducing people's electricity bills. And that's something I feel quite passionate about. Something I should also mention about this slide is the collaboration. So when we were developing Egni2020, we were discussing and conspiring all the time with M-SParc across the mountain. And also we were following the lead of Egni2020 in Abergwyngregin. And we have worked closely together from the outset, you know, sharing grant applications, sharing rants, and just working closely together. And that's actually been formalised in Egni now. So we worked with DEG, that's Egni2020, and we set up a consortium called Egni, which now employs 2 people. And most recently, we're working closely with Egni now and other social enterprises across North Wales. And we've gone through to the next stage of the CAF, so the Climate Action Fund, lottery funding. So yeah, from small seeds, you know, good things grow. And I always refer to Egni2020 as a catalyst. Without Egni2020, you know, Egni2020 wouldn't have opened a sustainability hub on our high street. Now, this is our main office on the right-hand side, and then on the left with the fresh paint, that's going to be our Dyffryn Gwyrdd Sustainability Hub, which is home to local organisations, Egni, but also to Community Energy Wales and other environmental partners. And it will be home also to new staff funded through our new project, the Dyffryn Gwyrdd project, the rural lottery funded project. We have also developed smaller sustainability projects, including Egni2020, which is community growing. Egni2020 have now moved from hydro. We have just developed 21 kilowatts of solar as well, and those solar PVs are on 6 community buildings in Bethesda. So it's kind of moving towards other forms of generation, but it's also again coming back to that economic sustainability, helping community buildings lower their electricity bills, and that's something we feel passionate about. Partner Egni as well, we have been lucky enough to be given a car for a year with the local leader project at Loesi Gwynedd Wledig. So we have access to Carwen, an electric vehicle, which is currently being used to deliver food and produce to local households during COVID. But we do have plans to think more about green transport, especially looking at the parking problems up the valley in M-SParc. We need to be innovative. You know, we don't want another diesel Sherpa. We need an electric vehicle to, you know, people to park in Bethesda and be carried up to M-SParc in an electric vehicle, bringing back, you know, environmental, economic and social benefits. Yeah, and I'll just kind of focus on the lottery project. We've just been awarded just under £500,000 to develop the Dyffryn Gwyrdd project, and that's going to be a project that tackles poverty in our area, but through environmental action. So tackling fuel poverty, rural isolation, transport poverty, but doing that in an innovative way and in a community-led way. And that's where we're at, really. So yeah, I think I'll finish there because I know we only have a short space of time, but if anyone needs to talk to me, always open for a call, maybe not a Zoom call. I'll meet you in the field or something. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr iawn am hwnna, Mel. Superb, really interesting stuff. And there's a lot there for us to think about in the wider scale of things as well. I think it's not about kilowatts produced, isn't it? It's about communities, it's about skills, it's about having a positive impact on the communities that we work in. And I think that goes for every single project presenting this afternoon. So diolch yn fawr iawn, Mel, am hwnna. Doedd a lot o wersi i ni fod yn meddwl amdan pawb sy'n yr alwad fa o hwnna pnawn 'ma. So diolch am blannu ambell i hadyn yn fan'na. Forwards from the community energy talk, I'll just run through what we've got coming up in the next good half hour or so. We are trying to keep it to 1 hour. We've got Marcus Dalfors from Bangor University, then we've got Rebecca Coley-Jones, Ynys Resources, and then we've got Energy as well with offshore wind. But first, maybe over to Marcus from Bangor University. Thank you for joining us, Marcus. And maybe you could share a bit with us about your project with the best title, I think, this afternoon. It's called Thor, everyone. Remember that one, Thor. And going back to what Mel was talking about, it's not just about kilowatts, it's about this human capital and skills and upskilling people, isn't it? But over to you, Marcus.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm going to try and manage to share my screen. Let's see, can you all see it?
Yes.
Very good. You might, I don't know, if you're versed in Scandinavian languages, you might hear a touch of that. It's not just Thor. I derive from a minority of Swedish speakers in Finland, so my name is actually Swedish, nothing else. but Thor, yeah, that we'll have to come up with some of the old Welsh gods at some point, I think, as well. But for now we stuck with Thor. It is so easy to make that connection when we're speaking about thermal hydraulics. Because from the beginning of the year, I was engaged as a reader within the Nuclear Futures Institute of Bangor University. It is in this capacity we sought for a grant and was awarded as well to build a thermal hydraulics rig, non-nuclear per se, no nuclear materials, but that has a big impact for how you run a nuclear plant efficiently. And obviously there are a lot of organizations right now looking into these things. Anyhow, I'll start out with telling you a little bit about our Nuclear Futures Institute at Bangor University. The whole institute is funded on the basis of Welsh Cymru. Sorry for my pronunciation. My wrong pronunciation of Welsh is Swedish inflicted. I'm sorry. Cymru. It's the other way around. You pronounce it in Swedish. Anyhow. We had about a 6 million grant to set up an institute. It's been running since 2017, and we have funding to 2022, but we hope there is a continuation after that as well. Right now, we're 5 academics and 7 researchers. Actually, we have one more, a little bit unofficial still, but we have one soon joining, and we hope to be expanding with several more during this year, including myself to my own group in reactor design and thermal hydraulics. As I mentioned, Thor, that is our latest addition to our lab capacity, and which will be important. But already since earlier, there's been refurbished lab space being made, and this is what we have dubbed Merlin. Which is generally a materials lab and includes capability to also process active material. That is proper nuclear stuff that can be done, but this is at the university then. If you see the hexagon below the text there, I suppose this is to depict that we have sort of 6 disciplines or legs to stand on. My colleagues in materials, they are very much involved with things like waste forms, fuel manufacture and design, fuel performance, and then we're bordering onto my own area, which is reactor physics and thermal hydraulics, and also monitoring and control, which are digital aspects. These now all sort of fuse together, and we work a lot across different topics within our team. All the corporate symbols and organization symbols below, that's just to depict, it's not complete or anything, it's just to depict that we have a variety of establishments where we collaborate in various topics. So obviously in a low carbon context, you're going to ask why do you want to go nuclear? Well, one of the classic arguments is obviously energy density. Within that little fuel pellet, 1 centimeter high and a little bit less than 1 centimeter in diameter, you can squeeze as much energy out of that as out of 6 cartloads of natural or 6 railway carriage loads of natural gas, and yeah, or several oil barrels, if you will. This density could even be higher if you go to more novel systems that can extract even more of the energy out of the uranium. So you get even higher efficiency. Another, we're discussing low carbon energy as well. Low carbon and climate change, that's just one side of how we need to take care of our planet. In essence, and now I'm leaning back towards Swedish science again. Well, there's been a lot of it done in the UK as well, and in the US, I think. But the concept of planetary boundaries, and there are essentially 9 of them. Very many of these, I can't delve into it in detail now, but many of these, they are actually addressed eminently by nuclear power. And as you might gather from this little picture here or graph, is that climate change is maybe not even yet the most striking case. We have other things like the biodiversity loss. That one is way beyond critical, and we also have the nitrogen cycle, over fertilization, and these things. People don't tend to think about these other boundaries as much, and I think, you know, this is the perspective that we need to discuss all kinds of energy production, and this also leads you to consider nuclear as an important player, and it leads you to the thought that, you know, all these low carbon energy sources, they need to complement each other in the right scenario, right location, right perspective, because they are complementary in the end. Anyhow, one thing, for instance, nuclear can be very condensed in space. It might use very little land, whereas many of the renewables, they will require a lot of land. On the other hand, they are very adapted to be localized, and you could even maybe produce it on your own house, or as we heard before, you can make use of your own local river, obviously in an environmental friendly way that you don't hurt biodiversity. But, you know, there are all these sides to every type of energy form that you have to consider. Obviously, now this is American statistics, but if you look at capacity factors that describe how you can utilize any energy form. So in the US case, at least, you know, there's no competition. Nuclear is the one that is the mainstay, that the kind of energy that you rely on. Come sunshine or rain or hurricane, that's the one that produces. Just briefly to define reactor physics, I won't do too much on this, but we essentially have two elements that enter into the calculations we do in reactor physics. I need to give you this background because we're going to present Thor, and that's about thermal hydraulics. So in reactor physics, you have neutronics. This is the method of following a neutron as it goes through different types of matter. You know, it's born in a fission, it's transported through various materials until it's eventually absorbed somewhere else. You need to do this, but then you also need to work with thermal hydraulics, because every nuclear system has a coolant. And how that coolant interacts with the neutron is very essential. And because it provides both a medium for the neutron to pass through, but it's also and it can be captured there and so on, but it also provides heat transfer, which is the purpose of a coolant. So very important. And you need to couple this thermal hydraulics and neutronics together in order to predict how the system works. It has bearing on economics and safety, extremely important.
Marcus, we've got another maybe 2 or 3 minutes, if that's all right.
My last slide.
Okay.
So essentially my last slide. So we have been awarded then the Thor, a grant of about £350,000 to develop the Thor facility at M-SParc. So this is something that we have just finished the initial procurement phase for generic equipment. It's essentially a small experimental rig to research thermal hydraulics. Could actually be any kind of steam generating plant. And the point is that destined for M-SParc is also the National Thermal Hydraulics Facility. And we want to supply the infrastructure and the competence that you need to support the location of such a facility. We're developing it in a stepwise approach. And obviously, as we are a university, we're also looking to create new science with practical application, which will provide upskilling locally of people and creating the competence needed. Right now, we're going into a detailed design phase, and that's to select in more detail components and develop controls and instrumentation. And this is a stage full of simulations and so on. Yeah, then I open to questions, and if you want to know more, my email address is there, and please take the opportunity to visit our webpage, also listed below.
Thank you very much, Marcus. And sorry to interrupt your presentation. I know it's a lot to include in such a short amount of time, but I think you did a really good job. So thank you very much, Marcus, for that. And Rebecca, I understand maybe you're having some Wi-Fi issues, but we're going to switch over to Rebecca Coley-Jones next. Diolch, Rebecca, am ymuno efo ni. I'm not sure if your Wi-Fi is going to hold out on us for the full presentation, but we'll give it a
apologies. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see your screen, but your audio is a bit iffy. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Ironically, we have people putting in pipes that will allow me to have fibre broadband in the future, but currently I'm working on copper, so apologies if I slip in and out. I'll do my best.
That's fine.
Okay, so mine's a little bit something different. It's not specifically concerned with energy, but does include some energy. And I was asked to maybe COVID-19 is having on sustainability and some of the lessons that we may be taking with us as we come out of this particular time. So I'm sure we've all seen pictures like this on our social media and on the TV. So the reduction in industrialized manufacture and reduction in global air travel and people driving around, etc.
I think we've lost you, Rebecca.
Has led to some remarkable changes, particularly in colour. And the other picture is one of the most polluted cities in the world, which is Beirut in the Lebanon, where you can now see clear skies. So there are some amazing positive impacts to being seen from the result of us as well. So we're seeing a lot of disposable face masks and gloves being thrown on the side of the road. These are finding their way into our drains and then onto our beaches, which is a bit of a side effect. I'm not quite sure why people are thinking it's okay to throw these. Also, we've seen recycling centres closed, and this has not just had other areas because of staff shortages. Places like Cardiff had to stop their recycling processes, and it's all been going to incineration. Most local authorities in Wales have actually continued to offer a fantastic recycling service throughout the pandemic, and are continuing to, and hopefully in the near future our recycling centres will be reopening, with obviously social distancing taken into place, and kind of job in these difficult times. But what are the long-term things that we might see coming out of lockdown? So there's been an emphasis recently on kind of avoiding public transport in places like London, and potentially kind of looking at other forms of transport such as cycling and walking. And in fact, the UK government in England has, as part of a £2 billion investment into improving cycleways, has invested 250 million in trying to encourage commuters to get on their bikes and commute to work, rather than taking public transport to try and avoid a spread of coronavirus. And hopefully this has been replicated in cities across the world. So the bottom picture is a picture in Berlin, where lanes has been taken over by bike lanes, and hopefully this will leave us with a legacy where it becomes much more convenient for people to be able to cycle. And for businesses going forward, a positive thing will be to try and encourage your staff to get on their bikes and or get on their feet and walk to work if possible. We're also seeing a massive change in other travel. So we've seen lots of more people working from home, and a lot of companies previously reluctant to allow their employees to work from home, thinking that it might lead to reductions in productivity. What we've actually seen is an increase in productivity, and this has been a huge social experiment which has been very successful, and hopefully will lead perhaps to less journeys as we come out of lockdown, as people see the benefits of using things like Zoom, presumably if they have decent bandwidth, and actually being able to look at how much travel is strictly necessary. This has all companies will go down if they're not paying for people to travel either by train or by car. So there are some real positive benefits that we can take going forward as we come out of lockdown. And what this has led is to a real long-lasting, hopefully, change in behaviour change. So in other countries where they have had restrictions to certain types of transport, it did show, for example, there was one in Switzerland where they couldn't go by car and they switch to electric, people are willing to take the time to go by train. So we may see a massive shift from planes to trains, especially in Europe, where high-speed trains are likely to be invested in going forward. So those are some of the transport examples. This is the change in energy mix from when we went into lockdown to when we came to this April the 6th. So a comparison between the 2 months, and the black is coal. So we can see that there's a lot more emphasis on lot less emphasis on coal and a lot more emphasis on renewables. So nuclear is this one here, which is the kind of pale green. And then we see increasing in usage. And we also see more solar, and obviously we've not had massively windy days. I kind of see that if we looked at today, for example, in the last few days where we've had a bit more wind, that we would see that. But what the key lesson from this is that basically with reduction in energy needs, we've seen a greater increase in use of renewables. And I think that's a really interesting lesson. We've also seen an increased sense of community, where we've seen a lot more people relying on local supply chains because they're much more reliable than global supply chains currently. So we've seen that, we've seen butchers, bakers, grocers all coming together to provide boxes for local communities and delivering those boxes out to people that need them. We've also seen aspects where teaming up with Medrumorn and Mentormorn, taking food out to vulnerable families and individuals. And I think that this is something really exciting that we could see going forward to in the future, whereby we can look around us first, not only for supplying our supply chains, but also for energy. We've seen some great examples of local community energy projects, but energy that from what we produce to producing sanitizer and safety equipment to all kinds of different things. And you know, that is a really encouraging thing. And also, as we come out of lockdown, seeing businesses collaborate together to make sure that we make the most of what we've got going forwards. And I think these encompass all the Wellbeing Act principles, so we can look long term. We've seen this happen. Nobody would have told you a year ago that this was a risk. It was the risk as far as justified pandemics as a significant risk. However, I don't think any of us saw it coming, and I think for businesses, they now need to look at long-term risk and what this can mean to their supply chains, to their distribution, to how they deliver their products and services. We can see more collaboration with other people in the supply chain. We can see prevention, so providing a safe and healthy quality offering to our customers and clients, people getting involved during this, and let's hope we can build on that. And just to complete the presentation, you know, with a proverb: if you want to go far, go together. And I think this is it's a often used proverb, but I think it really shows during this pandemic actually what we can achieve when we work together. And I think that is particularly true of energy and sustainability. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Rebecca. That's excellent. And bang on time as well for your presentation. I'm aware that Paul Carter and Helen Thomas from Energy, they've got to leave us at 3 o'clock for another important meeting. So without further ado, big thanks to Rebecca for the presentation there. as to how COVID may impact us going forward. And I understand from your presentation, Egni, that we'll learn a bit about your future plans as well. So over to you both.
Hello, thank you very much for the introduction, and good afternoon to everyone. My name's Paul Carter from Egni2020. I wanted to outline what I wanted to run through today, an introduction to Egni2020 as a company, and then talk you through our most recent project, which is really the focus of why we're involved in this in this great discussion today, which is the Gwyntamore project, which is operating off the north coast of Wales. And then I wanted to talk through some of the opportunities that offshore wind presents to North Wales, not only in itself as the sort of supply chain sector launch that's needed in order to gear North Wales up to deliver the opportunities for this project, but also the springboard this provides for other sectors such as hydrogen, and also the step in some of the new technologies such as floating wind. I hope everyone can see my slides. Great.
Yes.
So Egni2020, we're a leading European energy company. We operate across a number of different technologies, offshore wind, onshore and hydro. And we've had a long presence in Wales, and a very proud presence in Wales, with a number of different operational and development projects over a long period of time, starting off with the Dolgarrog hydro scheme, which we own and operate. Energy Cymru produces about 1/3 of Wales's renewable electricity, so that's the equivalent of about 500,000 homes worth of electricity. And we've got about 130 permanent employees across Wales at 4 different offices, with a focus for our offshore fleet at our Mostyn office, which services our 3 operational offshore wind farms in North Wales. The Gwyntamore project, which is 576 megawatts, and at the time of it being constructed was the 2nd largest offshore wind farm in the world, although has been superseded by many since, as we've seen such a development of projects through Europe and around the world over the last sort of 5 years since Gwyntamore was operational. And then we've got our older Real Flats and North Hoyle projects, which were really the gateway projects for offshore wind. Certainly North Hoyle, the first commercially developed operational project in the UK, and Wales is right at the forefront of that. And I think North Wales is, you know, it's a real hub for offshore wind, and we want to continue it to be so as we develop the Moor project, which is the proposed extension to Gwyntamore. So to come on to the Moor offshore wind farm project, as you can see on the map on the right, I'll just outline a few things. You can see our existing projects outlined in blue. These are the Real Flats, the North Hoyle and the Gwyntamore projects. And our proposal is for development of an extension of Gwyntamore to the west of the existing project. And this is part of the Crown Estate's offshore wind extensions programme that they launched a couple of years ago. We're at a very early stage with this project. We're starting our environmental impact scoping, we're starting our stakeholder engagement, and we're really getting the word out about this project, and hence so we're delighted to be invited to have that opportunity to present about it today. A lot of things are unconfirmed about the project in terms of the exact size and capacity, and in particular the size of turbines that would be used. The industry's moved on so quickly since Gwyntamore was built with 3.6 megawatt turbines. We're now looking at projects being built today with 10 and 12 megawatt turbines, and we're having to some degree second guess where the industry is going, and looking towards even up to 22 megawatt turbines that could be available at the time that we're constructing Gwyntamore. Apologies, Moor. This extension project would be roughly 10 kilometres off the North Wales coast at the closest point, about 11 kilometres north of Llandudno, and about just over 100 kilometres in area for the development area we're considering at the moment. And obviously we're at the start of that process, and that may well get refined as we go through. We're going to need a nationally significant infrastructure development consent order, and we're also going to need a marine licence from Natural Resources Wales. So we're working hard with both of those bodies and a lot of other consultees to go through the process. We have a grid connection for this project in Bodwithen in Denbighshire, which is where the existing Gwyntamore project connects. And our plan, our overarching plan, is to be able to deliver this project and be operational by 2030 to deliver against the ambitious Welsh energy targets, which we fully support. So that's a quick overview of the project, but what I think is really important for people to see is what this means for the region and the opportunities that it highlights. As a long-standing sort of firm within North Wales with such a long tradition of offshore wind in the area, we saw when the government launched its industrial strategy and the offshore wind sector deal, we saw this an opportunity for us to be championing a cluster, a sector approach in North Wales to try and identify all the opportunities to the supply chain that could come from not only this project, but also all of the operational projects that currently exist, both in North Wales and also around other parts of the Irish Sea. There's no reason why businesses and people in North Wales can't be taking advantage of other projects in the near area and also further afield. This is a UK, European and global industry that people can take advantage of. And we know of businesses in North Wales that do take advantage all around the world of the opportunities that offshore wind presents. So Innogy has been taking a leading role in what we've called the Offshore Energy Alliance. And this brings together a whole host of bodies, the North Wales Economic Ambition Board, we've got Mersey Maritime involved, Welsh Government involved, Cumbria Local Partnership Enterprises as we move around the coast, and many others to try and highlight the opportunities, not just of offshore wind, but this is a cross-sector maritime organisation that will really highlight opportunities that can be gained now from the offshore wind and the operational projects that are there now, but also future opportunities. And I just wanted to highlight some of those future opportunities following on from Alamore. Offshore wind's clearly a developed technology in the fixed format, and there is a well-developed supply chain, and we're trying to gear that up in North Wales to take further advantage of Alamore. But there are other opportunities coming down the line, and floating wind is one of those. And we see North Wales and Anglesey in particular as a great potential location for floating wind with water depths of circa 100 meters off the coast, 30-40 kilometers off the coastline, which is the ideal scenario for floating wind projects. An early Welsh pilot project such as this would give North Wales a great position in developing the right companies and taking advantage of opportunities as floating wind really develops both in the UK, Europe and around the world. And I think this is going to really take off over the next 10 years or so in order to meet the ambitious targets that many governments are setting. And we also see great potential for offshore wind to be delivering energy into green hydrogen, both across Wales and elsewhere. And Innogy is taking part in the scoping study for the North Wales growth deal relating to hydrogen. We see that there's a requirement to act now about these sorts of things, that the long lead times for the sorts of infrastructure that's required in terms of ports, grid and other aspects means that government and other players need to act now to make sure that the Welsh economy is in the right place to be able to take advantage of all of these future opportunities and build on what Wales is already doing so well with respect to fixed foundation offshore wind. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present to us, and myself and Helen would be keen to take any questions, obviously offline from this, about the Alamore project and some of the opportunities here, and particularly for any people from businesses that are listening that would be keen to get involved to get more information about the Offshore Energy Alliance.
Excellent. Thank you both very much. I know you've got to leave us. You've got another meeting that started a minute ago. So hopefully you won't be in too much trouble for being late for that one. But thank you ever so much for joining us for that one. It was really, really interesting stuff. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then last but not least, and related to the last talker there from Innogy, and especially within the hydrogen field, we have Gyta Owen. to talk about the possibilities around hydrogen for the region. And I've been discussing the opportunities around hydrogen with you, Gito, for the last 5 years, and it seems we're finally getting to a point where it's becoming, shall we say, a bit more mainstream. Felly, cynhyrfus iawn I gael chdi yma. Diolch, Gito, am ymuno efo ni, ac edrych ymlaen am dy gyflwyniad.
Diolch yn fawr I ti, Pryderi, a ia, braf iawn cysylltu a siarad efo hydrogen eto. Dwi'n meddwl oedd o'n, 2018, ia? Egni 2018, dyma fi'n gwneud cyflwyniad ar hydrogen. A ia, ni wedi sgwrsio cyn hynna, so mae pethau wedi symud ymlaen lot ers hynna, do'n wir, ia. Yeah, thank you, Pryderi, and everyone for this opportunity. I'm just going to give a quick overview on the hydrogen scene, but emerging projects with Menter Môn around Holyhead. And it's good that it follows on from what Paul was just saying there as an introduction to some other hydrogen developments, which is great. So hopefully you can see the screen. I've just highlighted it to begin with the pin-up maybe of hydrogen, the hydrogen trains, which are now operational in Germany and elsewhere. And it's certainly an opportunity for those in Wales and across the UK network as well. And it's straight up there, you know, it's zero emission technologies, there's zero carbon pathways and zero air pollution as well. And that's going to be important. You know, perhaps there's a bit of a hiatus, a breathing space currently as we line up for post-recovery, and the green recovery has been mooted across Europe and in Wales and the UK as well. But some of the signals coming out are really strong in terms of hydrogen playing a key role in the green recovery and around technologies like emerging hydrogen trains, and without the need for too much infrastructure. You can see from the picture, there's no overhead rail line, overhead catenary there. It's an electric train, but with hydrogen as the fuel on that train. So yeah, hopefully sometime in the future we can see some of these running from, say, Holyhead to Cardiff, and even helping to stimulate opening new lines from Gaerwen to Amlwch, for example. It's a very flexible technology which can be deployed. But the message is, it's here and now, it is being deployed on mainland Europe, and there are moves afoot to introduce these to Wales and the UK as well. And what I like to do is, I'll come back to the local project in a minute, but learning from others is always, it was great. We've heard from other examples across the world this morning already. And I personally take my steer a lot from what other countries are doing. So if they're doing it, why can't we do it, kind of thing? And this picture is beginning to emerge within Wales. And I should have said at the beginning as well, I'm Gito in low carb renewables consultancy focusing on hydrogen and fuel cells. But I'm also coordinating the establishment of Hy Cymru, which is the new Wales Hydrogen Trade Association. And we're working within a network of people within Wales, including energy, to advance hydrogen as much as possible, public awareness, as well as practical projects and strategic work. But coming back to this main point of seeing others are doing it, so we should crack on and do it here as well. And one of the best examples I can use, and I think I used this, a similar picture to this in Egni2018 on the Netherlands. Well, they've moved on a lot in this last year and a half, and they now have a full-scale pathway really for hydrogen to be a dominant fuel to run their economy through the 2020s, scaling up, but then really ramping up to the 2030s and to 2050 as well. And it's been acknowledged, I could supply evidence after evidence that hydrogen has a key role, especially green hydrogen from renewable sources, but also looking at nuclear to hydrogen sources as well, 2030 onwards, in reaching net zero targets. So there's more and more evidence now at the large global scale, but also down to the local community scale, how hydrogen has a key role to play as what is essentially a zero emission fuel. So yeah, the Netherlands, they've got all sorts of projects which are up and running, and a strategic look at this, utilizing their offshore resource, which is considerable, to produce green hydrogen, but also the infrastructure, the pipework, the electricity infrastructure as well, what's called sector coupling between these different grids, grid balancing as well. And essentially it's releasing the full potential of renewables. We know we can produce electricity at scale from renewables, but there's blockages with grids and also the applications, whether it's in industry or for heavy transport in particular. So hydrogen has a role to play, and a strategic role in acting as a fuel which can work across the sectors and to decarbonize the entire economy as a complement to renewable energy, if that's the main resource. And we're also looking forward to nuclear as well. So if they're doing it in the Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, countries across the world are on this pathway now. There's a lot of projects taking place in Wales and the UK already, but maybe not quite as strategically as this. This morning I was on a webinar which was on Teams, which is much more difficult than this. Pryderu, Zoom is much easier. There we are. That's a lesson for today. But the Energy Networks Association, which you know, the UK utilities essentially, had a green gas webinar, and hydrogen was the dominant theme throughout that this morning. There was talk about biomethane, but yeah, if we want to scale up, hydrogen was great for people like me, hearing that message coming loud and clear. And yeah, I don't want to give too many stats, but there's one which has jumped out for me recently as well. Germany is about to publish its national hydrogen strategy. And they're talking there that hydrogen will supply 56% of the primary energy needs by 2050. So this is a huge leap from zero currently. Germany cannot produce all its own renewable hydrogen, so they're looking at a global supply chain of hydrogen for imports, and maybe we can play a role in that as well, because we have the resource here in Wales to supply ourselves and others as well. So that's my, you know, yardstick, if you like. They're doing it, why don't we do it here as well, at scale and for ownership as well. So the project I'm involved with, I can't give you too many details on this yet, because we're about to complete the business case, the final report, over the next couple of weeks. But a bit of background, yeah, about a year and a half ago, I was commissioned to do some scoping exercises for Mentermôn, which was looking at the hydrogen potential on the island, knowing that you've got renewable resource, there's good grid infrastructure, there are strategic sites, and they're a very, there's a strong appetite amongst the local stakeholders as well, and building on the, you know, the work of Energy Island, which is, you know, a good platform to work on this kind of project. And we quickly came to the conclusion that Holyhead was an ideal site to do some detailed work on mapping a, you know, a study which could develop a hub for hydrogen production and use, both locally, but also looking at export opportunities as well. So, as I said, yeah, within, you know, a few weeks, hopefully we can come back, we can provide some more details about this study. But essentially what we're looking at doing is establishing a hub which can match the supply of hydrogen from green resources to the demand at the port with Stena, with Cyngor Ynys Môn as the local authority, and importantly with haulage operators, because HGV lorries, they are suitable for conversion to hydrogen because of the demand, and then scaling up to trains as well, perhaps. But the plan is to map the supply with demand with a controllable hub to begin with, but then looking at the scale-up opportunities. So yeah, the hub would be at Holyhead, the supply would be locally, but then let's be ambitious and try and emulate the things that they've done in the Netherlands, and maybe export to, you know, the mainland in North Wales and even beyond that as well. So I'm mindful of what Henry was saying this morning, and Energy just said now about clusters in D-side, and there's other networks emerging, which is great because you can't do this in isolation. So it gives, yeah, it's good that other work is happening in hydrogen, and maybe we can develop the cluster supply chain ownership models for this ideal, which is releasing renewables potential in the form of hydrogen as a green fuel at scale, but using North Wales as the base for that, and Holyhead to begin with as well, because of its strategic advantage. So that's the background, really. There's a project which is live, which is about to report, and we'll look for investment to make that happen. And finally, this is the inspiration, maybe. This chap, you all know by now, hopefully, is... No answers? Okay. That's William Grove, and he invented the fuel cell. He's from Swansea back in 1839. And that's a picture from our launch of High Cymru, of the Trade Association in Cardiff, at the end of February, which seems a very, very long time ago now. And he's riding a hydrogen bike there as well. So you can apply hydrogen at the big industrial scale, right down to the local city and local community scale as well. So this guy's been waiting, what, nearly 200 years? So it's about time we cracked on with it and got going with the hydrogen supply chain.
So we've got to stress it's the actual William Grove, not the original one, is it, Gito? It's not the original William Grove, is it?
No, no, no. We couldn't resurrect him, but it looks a bit like him.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic.
Diolch am wrando.
Na, gwych. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Gito. And hopefully, you know, just finishing on hydrogen, and sometimes we think, oh, these things, you know, hydrogen, oh, that's something for the future. Well, it's actually happening now. Hydrogen is a really tangible part of the energy mix across the world. And as you mentioned, Gito, if other countries are doing it, then why can't we? And hopefully this afternoon, within an hour and a quarter, I know we've run slightly over, it doesn't matter, it's been really good and exciting, hopefully everyone's enjoyed. But we've showcased the breadth and the opportunities around energy, from, you know, the lessons of community energy from Mel. Diolch Mel am hwnna I ni, showcasing the importance of ownership and community ownership, right through to research that Bangor University are doing. Rebecca gave us food for thought as to how COVID might change things for the future with regards to our habits and our consumptions. And then we learned, of course, about the developments offshore wind with Awel in energy and the potentials around hydrogen. And then we have the complete package kind of wrapped up with Henry Aaron at the beginning there with the growth deal. So really good event. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to the panelists for presenting, and stay tuned for other events coming soon as well. Hopefully we will have a physical Egni event towards the end of the year when we can spend maybe a bit more time going into a bit more depth with all these different subjects, but it's really, really exciting stuff. So diolch yn fawr iawn I chi gyd am ymuno yn ei pnawn yma, ac sori eto am redag chydig bach yn hwyr. Hwyl chi wan.
Diolch yn fawr, Pryderi. Hwyl.
Ta-ra.